the korban. I'll start that again. This week's Sedra, I've got it. This week's Sedra, it continues to speak about the korbanot, the sacrifices, and once again goes into the intricate detail therein. I mentioned during my sermon last week that the word korban comes from, which is the word for sacrifice, comes from the root word karev, meaning to draw near to Hashem. Through the symbolism of the korban, we come closer to Hashem. Amongst the sacrifices mentioned in this Sedra are the oila, the burnt offering, the free will sacrifice that was entirely consumed on the Mizbeach, which symbolizes our giving of ourselves entirely to Hashem, Kalil Hashem. And there was the korban chatas, which is going to be speaking about this week's Sedra, the sin offering, which, as the Torah stipulates, was put in the very same place that the oila, the burnt offering, was slaughtered. So too, the korban chatas, the sin offering, was offered and slaughtered in exactly the same place. In other words, if you were a casual observer in the temple, you were watching what was going on, and a person comes to slaughter his sacrifice, you would not know whether he was just bringing a free will offering, an oila, or whether it was a korban chatas, an offering brought because he or she had done a sin. Why is that? So the first point is, you've sinned. There is the case of anonymity. People don't need to know what you've done. People don't need to know what exactly you've done. They don't even need to know that you've sinned. They don't need to know what you've done against Hashem. Then it's a very private thing between the individual and Hashem. So the korban oila and the korban chatas were in exactly the same place to stress that particular point. Second, you never know where life is going to take you. 1 minute, you can be at the top of your game. You can be the president of a big company. The next day, you could be an office temp. You don't know what Hashem has in store for you. 1 minute, you could be full of righteousness. Second, you could fall. And third, the oila is in essence very similar to the korban chatas, to the sin offering, in the fact that one is brought because you want to bring an offering to Hashem, and the other because of your distance to Hashem. But actually, the Gemara in Brachot says like this. It says, "B'makom sheba'alei teshuva omdim, ein tzadikim gemurim yecholim la'amod sham," which means the place where the truly penitent people stand. In other words, the place where the ba'alei teshuva stand. Even the holy righteous cannot stand in that place. In other words, a person sins and comes back. He's tasted sins. He's enjoyed the pleasures there, but still wants to find his way back home. Even the entirely righteous cannot stand in that place. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. I'd like now to hand over to Frank to give a little Devar Torah.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for your words, and thank you for your kind wishes for Annette and myself as we fly off to Israel next week. That's very well received. Thank you. I'd like to start this week by looking at the very, very end of the Torah, and in fact in the Sedra of Vayelech, because in the Sedra of Vayelech, which is at the very end of the book of the Devarim, we're given a command for every one of us to write our own Sefer Torah. Kitvu lachem et hashira hazot. Write for yourself this song. And very interesting terminology, because why does the text not say, write for yourself this Torah? Why does it use the word shira, a song? And I think that one of the things that we learn and we bring down from this verse is we talk about the books of the Torah, but the Torah is actually a book of music. And a book of music is meant to be sung. And so it was around the 10th century of the Common Era that the musical notes were, and the cantillation was devised and formalized for the Kriyat HaTorah. When you look at the Torah, every standalone word in the Torah has its own note. And this dictates exactly how if every single word needs to be sung and how every note was attributed to every word to help and explain and to enhance the meaning of that word. We all know that it's 100% essential that the Baal Koreh, the person doing the laning, gets the Hebrew right. Each and every word has to be pronounced clearly and accurately. And if it's not, we correct the Baal Koreh. But what about the notes? What if the Baal Koreh sings the wrong notes? Then what do we do? There are actually various conflicting opinions as to what we should do. The Rambam says that the Baal Koreh should be corrected, but the Ramah says not. And generally, the practice that we follow today is that we do not correct the Baal Koreh for singing the right word with the wrong notes in any order. What was also interesting is I was reading I have in Israel, the Gutnik Chumash. Now, this was a Chumash that was published as recently as 2006. And the Chumash includes lots of commentaries, teachings, and essays of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And in this Chumash specifically, it says, if the reader makes a mistake in pronouncing a word, he has to obviously be corrected. But in Chabad communities, even if he errs in choosing the correct cancellation note, he must be corrected. So what we're seeing is that whilst it's not our practice to, I won't say to worry about the notes, but not to correct, within Chabad communities, they are still very, very, take very importantly, the correct notes in the correct order when we're looking at the laning. And I think that even though today we don't correct for singing the wrong notes, the fact that people do still correct in some places shows how important these notes are. So this afternoon, I'm here to speak about the Sedra of Tzav. What does the notes, what does the cancellation got to do with the Sedra of Tzav, as opposed to any other Sedra? The late and deeply missed Chief Rabbi, Lord Jonathan Sachs, Zeichet Tzadik Livracha, said that all good leaders know their own limits, know their own limitations. Knowing what you can do and what you can't do can be a painful experience sometimes, and it can often create inside you an emotional crisis. He then continues by saying that the Torah includes 4 such episodes of this knowing your limitations. But when you look at the Torah, the 4 episodes are not linked by the Hebrew. They're not linked by the texts, but rather they're linked by the music. And specifically, these 4 episodes are linked by the specific note that is used to record these 4 stories. In the whole of the Torah, there is one note, and only one note, that occurs just 4 times. That note is the shalshelet, which in English translates as a chain. We hear it 3 times in the book of Bereshit, and once in Vayikra. Yes, we got there in this week's Sedra Tzav. The first instance occurs in the story of Lot. Lot had settled in Sodom and had assimilated into with the local community. His daughters married the local men, and he himself sat in the gates, a sign that he had been made a judge. 2 visitors come along and tell Lot to leave because God is about to destroy the city. Yet Lot hesitates. And above the word for hesitate, Vayitmama, in Bereshit chapter 19, is the shalshelet. Lot is torn. Lot is conflicted. He senses that the visitors are right, but on the other hand, the city is his city. It's where he's invested his whole future. He's got an identity. His family is established there. And ultimately, the angels then take him forcibly out of the city to safety. Had they not done so, he would have delayed. He would have been destroyed. It would have been too late. The Shalshelet emphasizes this dilemma, the hesitation. The second time we come across the Shalshelet is a couple of weeks later, when Avraham asks his servant Eliezer to find a wife for Yitzchak. The commentators suggest that Eliezer felt a profound ambivalence to this particular task that he'd been set. Why? Because if Isaac had not married and had children, Avraham's estate would have passed to Eliezer or to Eliezer's descendants. But if Eliezer, on the other hand, fulfilled Avraham's wish and brought back a wife for Yitzchak, their couple had children, then Eliezer's inheritance has just disappeared. Eliezer had two conflicting instincts within him. On one hand, he had the loyalty to Avraham, and on the other hand, he had his personal desires, his personal ambition of the inheritance. Again, illustrated very clearly by the presence of the Shalshelet, the note. Eliezer's loyalty won, but not without a struggle, the Shalshelet. The third time that the Shalshelet occurs, again in Bereshit, in the Sefer of Vayeshev, and it's in the episode where Yosef is being seduced by Potiphar's wife. Yosef refuses. He says that to do such a thing, initially, would be to betray his master, Potiphar, the wife's husband. And then he also says it would also be a sin against God. Again, he was torn, he nearly succumbed. He was torn between doing something that would offend and upset his master. He was torn between offending and upsetting God. But nevertheless, the circumstances, he hesitated. There was still that confusion. And over the word, once again, on the word Vayima'en, is the Shalshelet. All three episodes demonstrate an inner conflict, an inner doubt. All three are just about identity. There are times when each of us has to decide, not just what shall I do, but what kind of person will I be? All three episodes are also about the Shalshelet. And so we come on to this week's Sedra, the Sedra of Tzav. After the sin of the golden calf, Moses had, at God's command, instructed Bnei Israel to build a sanctuary. Now all that remains is for Moshe to induct his brother Aharon and Aharon's sons into office. He's about to perform the various sacrifices appropriate for the occasion. Yet, over the word Vayishchat, and he slaughtered, when we're talking about the sacrificial ram, we come across the fourth example of the Shalshelet. Now we know from the previous examples that this means there was an internal struggle in Moshe's mind. But what was it? Because there's no clue whatsoever in the text to suggest that Moshe was undergoing a crisis. Well, until now, Moshe had led the Jewish people. He was by far and away the leader. Aharon had been his assistant. He was his aide and the second in command. He was always with Moshe to support him, but the number one was Moshe himself. Now, as Aharon and his family are being inducted, Aharon was taking on a new leadership role in his own right. No longer would he be one step behind Moshe or at his side. He would now be doing something that Moses himself could not do. It would be Aharon who would preside over the daily offerings in the tabernacle. It would be Aharon who would mediate the avodah, the Israelite sacred service to God. Once a year on Yom Kippur, it would be Aharon who would perform the service that would secure atonement for the people from its sins. No longer in Moses' shadow, Aharon was about to become the one kind of leader that Moses was not destined to be, that Moses would never become, the high priest. And that was Moses' inner struggle, his limitations, knowing where he was, and suddenly that he was going to be trumped, superseded by Aharon. And the episode is highlighted by the Shalshelet over the word Vayishchat. So perhaps moving forward, maybe we should all bring the Shalshelet into our lives. Maybe we all need to try to be less impetuous. Maybe we ought to hesitate for a moment and think, what should I do? What kind of person am I? Perhaps we should all try and make the Shalshelet a daily occurrence for all of us, rather than just a 4 times a year note in the Torah. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Wow, what a beautiful Devar Torah. I like the quote from the Chabad Gutnik. Gutnik, you knew I was going to say something about that, didn't you? I love the quote. We don't actually follow that, thank God. Whew. Otherwise you do the laning every week, not me. But I think actually the halacha is very, very important. The Ramah says we are not so careful about Tameh Hanikinot, and we should strive to get it right. But the most important thing is to get the Esnachta and the Sof Pasuk in the right place. Esnachta is like the comma thing, because that really makes sense of everything. If you can get everything right, you're a great Balkora, if you can. But that's the thing. The other thing, I think it's a lovely message, a beautiful message, and thank you. We'll take that with us. Thank you, Frank. And as I said, bon voyage. But we'll see you over Shabbat in the session. Lovely. Now we continue. Robert, if you'd like to say anything. Yes, we've still got
straight in.
Right, straight into it. Shall I do this?
Give a page number if you wish. I mean, you do it.
What's the page number? Oh, what page number? Wait a second. Let me just find it. Hold on.
Your mic's loud, Robert.
I don't think I can control that. I can control my playback, but I can't control the... I'm turning my playback down. Is this getting better?
A bit better, yeah.
It sounds better.
Danny, just turn your volume down.
I have.
Right. Okay.
Right. Well, I don't know if I can control my output volume. I can only control what I'm hearing from other people, the way my loudspeaker sounds. So if it's too loud, somebody pull the plug out. Let me know. How are we doing? Yeah, you're muted, Rabbi Black. ירוץ עבדך כמו היער, ישתחווה מול הדרך, ירב לו ידידותיך, מנוף צוף וכל טעם, הדור נאה זיף העולם, נפשי חולה תאוותך. אנא אנא רפנה לה, בהרות לנו המזיבך, אז תתחזק ותתרפא, והייתה לה שמחת עולם.
Can I just interrupt? Sorry,
yes.
There is a lot of static on your line. I don't know, your mic must be picking up a lot of different things. Now, I could pop round to you and give you a decent mic if you want. Shall I do it?
Yes, will it be in time? Yes. All right, I'll carry on in the meantime.
Keep going, I've got a decent mic. Hold on. Yeah.
Adonai, I've done that one, haven't I? ותיק ימונה רחמך וחוסנה בין אהובך כי זה כמה נחשפתי לראות בתפארת עוזך אליך חמדה ליבי חוסנה ואל תתעלם, יגאלנה ופרוס חביבי עלי, את סוכת שלומך, תאיר ארץ מכבודך, נגילה ונשמחה בך, מהר אהוב כי במועד, וחמנו כי מעולם. לי לה 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 לי לה 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 לי לה 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 לי לה 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 לה
Okay. Right, let me just get this.
Nothing wrong with your mic, Robert.
Nothing wrong with it.
No,
No, it's right. Nothing wrong with it. Right.
That's the output, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Put
Right.
this one on over here. See if it works
Right.
better. 1 second. It should actually. Does that?
How are we doing? Is this better? Is this worse?
Yeah.
It's better. Good. Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Right.
Todaraba.
Okay. Go into the corner rather not, and I'll be
Okay.
back to change it. I need it back. Thanks. That's some time.
לכו נרנן על אדוני, נריע לצור אישנו, נקדמה פניו בתודה, בזמירות נריע לו, כי גדול אדוני, ומלך גדול הכל, אלוהים אשר בידו, מקרי ארץ ותועפות הרים לו, אשר לא הים והוא עשהו, ויבשת ידיו יצרו. בואו נשתחווה ונכרע נברכה לפני אדוני עושינו, כי הוא אלוהינו ואנחנו ערשו וצאן ידו, היום בקולו תשמעו, אל תקשו לבכם כמריבה, כי יום מסע במדבר, אשר אני נשוני אבותיכם בחנוני גם ראוף עלי, 40 שנה כל בדור, ואמרם טוען לבכם, והם לא ידעו דרכי, אשר נשבעתי ויפי, אם יבון אל מנוחתי. שירו לאדוני שיר חדש, שירו לאדוני כל הארץ, שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו, מסרו מיום ליום ישועתו, ספרו בגויים כבודו בכל עמים נפלאותיו, כי גדול אדוני ומהולל מאוד, נורא הוא על כל אלוהים, כי כל אלוהי הימים ואדוני שמיים עשה, הוד והדר לפניו, עושה תפארת במקדשו, עבור לאדוני משפחות עמים, עבור לאדוני כבוד ועוז, עבור לאדוני כבוד שמו, שאו מנחה ובואו לחצרותיו, ישתחוו לאדוני בהדרת קודש, חילו מפניו כל הארץ, אמרו בגויים אדוני מלך, אף תיכון תבל בעל תימות, ידין עמים במישרים, ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ, ירם הים ומלואו, יעלו שדי וכל אשר בו, אז ירננו כל הצייר לפני אדוני, קיווה לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט הבל בצדק ועמים באמונתו, אדוני מלך תגן הארץ ישמחו יים רבים, המלך של סביבת צדק משפלחו נגסו, אש לבניו תלך ושלהי מבצריו, העירו רכב תבל ראתה אותך כל הארץ, הרים קרו נגלה משום לפני אדוני, מלפני אדון כל הארץ יקבלו שמיים צדקו וראו כל עמים כבודו, יבושו כל פתל המסללים בלילים ישתחוו לו כל אלוהים, שב ותשמח ציון ותגל לבנות יהודה למען משפטך אדוני, כי אתה אדוני עליון על כל הארץ, מאוד נעלית על כל אלוהים, אוהבי אדוני עשינו רע, שומר נפשות חסידיו, מיד רשעים יצילם, אור זרוע לצדיק ולישרי לב שמחה. שמחו צדיקים באדוני, והודו לזכר קודשו. מזמור אשר אדוני שיר חדש, כי נפלאות עשה הושע אלוהים ינזור קדשו. הודיע אדוני ישועתו לעיני גויים גילה צדקתו. זכר חסדו ואמונתו לבית ישראל, ראו כל ארצי ארץ את ישועת אלוהינו. הרי אדוני כל הארץ פסקו ורנו וזמרו, זמרו אדוני בכינור, בכינור וכל זמרה, בחצוצרוס וכל שופר, הריעו לפני המלך אדוני. ירם הים ומלואו, תבל ויושביה, נהרות ימחאו כף, יחד הרים ירננו, לפני אדוני קיווה לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט תבל בצדק, ועמים במישרים. אדוני מלך יגרזונים לשב קרבים צונת לארץ, אדוני לציון גדול ורמו על כל העמים. יודו שמך גדול נורא קדושו, ועוז מלך משפט אוהב אתה, כוננת משרים משפט וצדקה, ביעקב אתה עשית. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו השתחוו לאדוני גלוף קדושו, משה ואהרון הכהן ושמואל וקורא שמו קוראים אל אדוני, והוא יענם. עמוד ענן ידבר עליהם, שמרו עדותיו וחוק נתן למו. אדוני אלוהינו אתה ניתם, אל נושא היית להם, ונוקם על עלילותם. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו, כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו. מזמור דוד. אבו לאדוני בנאלים, אבו לאדוני כבוד ועוז, אבו לאדוני כבוד שמו, השתחוו לאדוני בהדרת קודש. כל אדוני על המים, אל הכבוד הרים, אדוני על מים רבים. כל אדוני בכוח, כל אדוני בהדר, כל אדוני שובר ארזים, וישבר אדוני את עזי הלבנון. וירקידם כמו עגל לבנון, וסריון כמו בן רמים. כל אדוני חוסם להבות אש, כל אדוני יכיל מדבר, יכיל אדוני מדבר קדש. כל אדוני יכול לעלות, ויחשוף יערות, ובחרו כולו מכבוד. אדוני למבול ישב, וישב אדוני מלך לעולם. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, ושמו תפארת ולתהילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, קומי מתוך אביך, רב לך שבט בעמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלייך חמלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. התנערי מעפר קומי, לבשי בגדי תפארתך עמי, על יד בן ישי בית הלחמי, קרבה אל נפשי גאלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי. אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לא תבושי ולא תקלמי, מה תשתוך יומות אמי, בך יחסו עניי עמי, ונבנתה עיר אל תילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. והיו למשיסה שוסייך, ורחקו כל מבלייך, יסיס עלייך אלוהייך, כמסוס חתן הכלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. ימין ושמאל תפרוצי, ואת אדוני תריצי. על יריש בן פרצי, ונשמחה ונדילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. בואי בשלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה. תוך אמוני עם סגורה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. Good. Lovely.
Thank you very much. Lovely. Thank you very much, Robert. Lovely.
Oh, now there's a problem here because, Rabbi, you've plugged my microphone into my speaker and that blanks out my hearing. So say whatever you just said again.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay. Shkoyach. Thank you. On behalf of everybody, it was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I have something I'd like to play, and Maurice, you said you'd allow me to share screen, though I don't see that. Yes, I do. We've got Purim now, was lovely this week. Now all that we've got to look forward to, and I'm sure the ladies are thrilled about it, is that we've got Pesach to look forward to. There's a wonderful setting of Chad Gadya by Moshe Oisha, with a name like that, once heard, never forgotten. And this is his version of Chad Gadya.